All right, hey everybody, it's Randy with Direct Action. This segment of the podcast is brought to you by Grey Fox Strategic. Grey Fox Strategic is one of the sponsors of Direct Action. They're located here in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. They are a found and finished Canadian-made product. Anything that you are requiring for Kydex specific, pistol holsters, magazine carriers, blade sheaths, anything that you're looking for, they customize it to meet your needs and desires. They make high quality stuff. They're located right here in Ottawa, Ontario. Reach out to them, give them a like, subscribe to who they are and what they're doing. And if you place an order on their website for a 10% discount, drop in DA10 and you'll get that 10% off. So thank you guys very much. Keep doing what you're doing. Grey Fox Strategic. Let's get into it. So we have a fantastic guest today. So Sam Cooper and I have met probably about 6 months ago. And I'm going to get him to walk us through how we met, what's on his mind, what he's doing. Sam, it's great having you on the show. I know you're a busy guy. You got a lot going on. He's an investigative journalist. He's been doing it for quite some time. I'll let him talk about how to find him, what his website is all about. But most importantly, Sam, thank you for making the time coming on the show. And tell the folks, how did we meet? How did this all come to fruition?
First of all, it's an honor to be, this is a unique podcast because I'm going to ask some important questions of you. You're going to ask some questions of me. It's two people in different channels that in my mind are doing something for Canada, have been and will continue to.
Yes.
So, what's on my mind? I mean, we met to an interesting path. Myself as an investigative reporter, I got into, it's getting more widely known across North America. I'm kind of the guy that was tip of the spear on exposing how the Chinese Communist Party is deep into our systems in Canada.
Right.
And these days, how that involves interoperability with Mexican cartels, Iranian threat networks, all the stuff that we now hear people at the level of the FBI director, Kash Patel, is essentially... People are kind of laughing, talking to me. Kash Patel's coming out and pointing to Vancouver's port and the CCP, the cartels, the triads, the Russians, the Iranians using Canada. And they're like, that's what you've been writing about for years.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, yes, I think he's aware of my work and I think he's on point. So how we met, I exposed what the Chinese Communist Party was doing to our recent elections. I was asked to testify in Parliament.
Wow.
2 years ago, June or July 2023, 2 years ago exactly, I was asked to testify on how the CCP is threatening Canadian politicians.
Right.
I testified 2 days later. INSET, that's RCMP's National Security Unit, knocks on my door and they said, we have a legal duty to warn you that we have learned of a credible threat relating to an investigative reporter reporting on the PRC.
Right.
They wouldn't even use my name. This is legalese, right? So
right.
In a nutshell, my work has made me an enemy of the Chinese Communist Party.
Sure.
And as my work shows, that involves how China uses the worst of organized crime around the world front and center in a lot of their operations.
Right.
So as a journalist, following my heart and trying to do something good for the country, I'm a little bit of exposed.
Yeah, for sure.
I know others in my life, whether they be, friends or experts that have felt similarly exposed. They told me they trained with you.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to talk about the person that we both know sure. I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Another good Canadian.
Another good Canadian doing good things.
So I reached out to you and you got me into, we're starting to get going on some, some personal hand-to-hand I'm doing, I never went the military route, but now you're getting me up to speed on if I have to do that. If I got to get down like that, I can get down.
Yeah. And I think, it's worthwhile mentioning at this point, what motivated you to reach out is for your own personal protection, which is legitimate. You're feeling exposed. The reality is this is happening on Canadian soil and you want to be better prepared. So for that, it's a blessing and a curse. It's a blessing that you reached out to me. It's a curse that you feel like you have to, but that's where we are today. And, I would, like I shared with you the very first session, I share with every individual that's interested in bettering themselves in personal protection is train. It's more optimal to be a little bit armed with some solutions to potential problems versus needing them when, the worst case scenario presents itself and we're not prepared for it. So preparation and training is good for everybody, but good on you for, training with me. I mean, our schedules have been, kind of sporadic at best, but you're getting some sessions in and, it's all getting better and better, which is great. To get back to what motivated you to start training before being exposed and before getting a knock on the door, how did you get into investigative journalism? And with that question as a two-part, how do you vet the sources where you get your information?
Oh, that's a very live question. So I've been doing this as a professional reporter for 20 years.
Right.
Prior to that, as a younger man, I was always, very athletic, sports minded, very competitive.
Mm-hmm.
So that was everything from, basketball, rugby, personally snowboarding, hiking.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a competitive person. I don't like to lose. I like to get after it. At the same time, my family had sort of, elite Canadian educations, worldly educations. My dad went to school in Switzerland, so he learned a lot about the world and elites. And, he went a certain path. My mother went a certain path in education. That all filtered into me. So I was very sort of literate and academic in a way, but loved writing. And that I also had at one point had thought about pursuing law, very justice minded. So that all, the competitiveness, the curiosity, the will to kind of have the confidence to tell the world, I figured something out important and I want you to know about it.
Yeah.
That's a very basic motivation, for good journalists and me. That's what channeled me into journalism. And so again, that's how I landed in Vancouver as a young reporter. Just really by chance, I found myself to be in the city, which I now know is a central node of transnational crime, channeling dirty money into the west coast of North America in a way, a form of, it's a rolling attack.
Right.
And so I figured that out. That really informed my journey as a journalist to the point where I got to the level of confidence I could write a book about it in 2021, Willful Blindness. I then developed, after leaving Global News, my last corporate media job in 2023, I started the Bureau.News, which is essentially an extension of my best-selling book that is unrolling this deep reporting on whether it's how organized crime is corrupting our systems and politicians, money laundering, counter-fentanyl, counter-espionage, just corporate reporting, legal reporting, political reporting. That's what I do at the Bureau, and that gets me into sources. How do I vet sources? It's like, it's no different than me finding you.
Right.
You find good, honest people. You get a sense of their motivation. I remember we had to have a call or two before both of us were like, okay, I can work with this person.
Yeah.
It's no different in journalism that you're getting a sense of who the person is as a person, what their motivations are, where do they get their information? Is it a very grounded, valid, is it a unique point of view?
Yeah.
Because when you get to a certain level, I can pick and choose, there's so many stories in the world, so let's pick good ones.
Yeah,
and that's
absolutely.
like a sixth sense after a while. But that brings me to a downside. This gets to, what we call the way I unfortunately am being targeted as kind of a lead dog on this.
Right.
I have been unfortunately exploited in a case by, gets me a little emotional now, by very serious threat networks. And this is not uncommon in the world. At a certain level of journalism, people will try to feed fake information, forged information. And unfortunately, that happened to me once. So I'm not going to say I'm perfect in vetting sources.
We're human.
We're human, live and learn. And I got exploited once, and I know why I got exploited. And I tell you this, working with people like you, anyone that was involved in that exploitation should not feel safe, because it's not done.
Yeah. And it's, interesting that you talk about vetting, because I remember when you reached out, it was exactly like that. Some of the stuff that I share with folks, it's usually generated for military and law enforcement. But there is a side junction that I provide for the general public. And, usually, before taking on a new client, I'll either do a video consultation asking some very pointed questions, or we do it in person. Because some of the stuff that I'm sharing with folks, like I don't want that to be in the hands of the wrong people, right? Yeah. So it's interesting where you and I, first conversation, you were asking as many questions as I was. And, long story short, I understand how you approach, the information that you're collecting on who you're collecting it from. Do you, on a consistent basis, or maybe once in a while, do you get people reaching out to you who maybe want to provide information, but don't necessarily want to be associated to where that information is coming from?
Yeah. In journalism, it happens all the time. And so some of my biggest stories, have been from people in North American government positions that can't have their name out there,
right,
because of whether it's the Securities Act, that is, you're not supposed to share certain
right,
classified or sensitive information, but they may have to because your government may be covering something up of great importance, as in the Chinese election interference story, where our government, and it's not just the Trudeau government, we've had a lot of governments that have dropped the ball for decades now on China specifically. And as I report, it's not just China, it's Iranian threat networks. And more recently, over the past 10 years, it's Mexican cartels infiltrating and working with those networks, the absolute worst of the worst in the world, using Canada. And so, yeah, there's people of tremendous integrity that will risk their career, perhaps even, their it touches on their family life in a way. I've had people say, I can't sleep at night. I have to have a solid reporter that knows what they're doing, know this information, because it's not getting handled any other way. So that is, that happens, and it's not every day, but some of my biggest stories, that has been the case. And, for tradecraft, you always try to build in some on the record sources to buttress the reporting. Once you've vetted that is real and that's necessary, those people need protection, then you're bringing in academic sources. It's like you're building a base that's not just based on confidential sources.
And from everything that you've exposed over 20 years in the industry now doing it, you must see common themes. And why is it that Canada seems to be a soft landing zone for some of these shitheads that are doing some evil shit?
Yeah, that brings me to the point of the podcast where I'm going to start asking you questions.
No problem.
Look, that we're vulnerable because, one, we lack an anti-racketeering law. It's either, complete no-brainer that we don't have one, or it makes sense that someone up high doesn't want us to have a racketeering law, because that's specifically what is allowing the Chinese triads, first of all, in the late 80s, 90s, to set up powerfully in Vancouver and Toronto through a gang called the Big Circle Boys, which emanated from the PLA and the Red Guards. This is how they're working together with transnational triads to use Canadian banks, to use whole cities as money laundering tools, to set up fentanyl super labs in Ontario, Quebec, everywhere. And there's some people I know because I'm in touch. There's people in certain areas of Canada's government at a high level that have had enough. And I'm not going to say that's in Ottawa. It may be in other areas of government that are more, okay, Alberta, I'll just come out and say it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm down to ride with Alberta. Put it that way, because they want to get after this.
They do.
But to answer your question, we lack the laws, and I and a lot of good people in Canada and the United States in government positions are starting to ask the question, do we lack the laws? Is it because we have people that have been corrupted through willful blindness, which is the title of my book? And more old school, direct corruption, turning a blind eye. And I'll give you the key example. Cameron Ortis, former the top RCMP intelligence official, he was selling Five Eyes investigation plans to people running encryption technology companies in Vancouver that were being used by the cartels, the triads, Hezbollah. So this is a guy, that was just one aspect of the way the top Mountie in intelligence with access to all the Five Eyes the worst corruption you can imagine. And beyond that, my information suggested he was misdirecting and degrading Canada's intelligence capacity, in effect, bringing down the walls to let these threat networks infiltrate further.
Right.
And I believe it goes, there are people that say it goes further than just one bad Mountie.
Yeah.
This is how Canada has been infiltrated. So, and let me now ask you a question off that one.
Sure.
You're from JTF2. That was your career. So what I want to ask is, first of all, what is JTF2? What are its capacities? And I know it's respected by the Navy SEALs and some of these legendary U.S. units.
Sure.
So tell us about what JTF2 is, and should we be telling Canadians more about this success story? Yeah. Because right now, you and I both know, as a country and as a military, we're feeling pretty downtrodden.
Yeah, for sure. There's no question that the Canadian Armed Forces has taken a bit of a hit and they're in a bit of a rut right now, but I do believe it's going to get better. JTF2's mandate is counterterrorism and hostage rescue. That's what they represent. That's what they stand for. That's what they're, every training iteration, every operation, it's got an element of how do we, create an interruption with activities, whether it's domestic or abroad, that has a direct effect on Canadian sovereignty. So the organization is, it's loaded with highly talented, intelligent, motivated go-getters. And, I believe, and really, I'd like to the core of my being, it's a conversation I had when I was still at the unit, probably 10 years ago. I believe there's a lot of, heinous stuff, activities that are going on here in Canada. And I mean, you've highlighted quite a bit in just a short, 15-minute conversation up to this point. A IDTF ought to be created. I know there's conversations and maybe these are being had at higher level.
What's an IDTF?
So an interdepartmental task force. So think members of JTF2, members of local police with a tactical response, RCMP, CSIS, CSEC, all the major players that have a lot of quality information that if shared properly, instead of in silos and everyone keeps it close to their chest because maybe it's ego, maybe it's fear, maybe it's risk adversity.
And what they call the intelligence to evidence conundrum, which doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, and we can talk about that too, but where I'm going with this is I do believe there is a lot of good work to be had right here in Canada. We have the right people to do it, motivated to do it. Why it isn't in place, is it a policy change that needs to happen at the federal level? Maybe, for a member of JTF2 to, execute a target on Canadian soil where that person may or may not have a Canadian citizenship. There are certain things that would have to be in place from a legality perspective. However, like any policy that gets implemented, it can also be amended. So if you get the right people with the right information, motivated to make a serious change and clean up the garbage in our own backyard, I believe there are multiple organizations in the Canadian Armed Forces and in our law enforcement communities that, with the right direction, they could do some serious work.
So again, leaning on an authority, Kash Patel has said Vancouver and Vancouver's port is being used by the Chinese Communist Party and the Mexican cartels. The cartels are now designated as terror entities. Mm-hmm. My reporting has shown that the cartels facilitate and work with Hezbollah.
Right.
If there's a fentanyl super lab in Canada, there's only 3 entities that can be running it. There's only 3 with the capacity: China, Iran, Mexico, and they're working together. And that's just one aspect.
Right.
So let's just get the question out of the way.
Sure.
The JTF2, your former colleagues who you're still in touch with, you think we should have authorities that if there's look, they've got to color it.
Yes.
There's been busts on the Vancouver border, right on the border with America in Surrey, where they got grenades. They've got 20 Mexican visas.
Yeah.
They've got serious weaponry.
Yeah.
So you think use the authorities and you can go in there?
Absolutely. Use the authorities, apply those authorities and allow those guys to be the scalpel. I think in some cases, they have a kind of misunderstood thought or direction on what JTF2 is capable of. Guys of that unit are very good at working in small teams. They're very good at applying the surgical effect where, it's not rolling up in a tank and blowing smithereens out of, certain structures.
Yeah.
These guys are clever. And, you see a lot of guys with, hair down to their shoulders and big beards. Man, like they do that for a reason. And it's either blend in or to disguise their identity, or if they need to, they clean up and look like a school teacher. They can do these things. They can do it very well. Plain clothes, surgical. And I think the cause and effect of what they're capable of, if the authorities were given, they would do some serious good work.
By the same token, the mind-blowing operation on Iran just happened. I'm rolling out of the pocket here, but it's already come up that people are warning that Iranian sleeper cells could be activated in North America. I saw an interview the other day where an Israeli official said, look, you've got about 700 Iranian regime figures in Canada. One of your former ministers, Erwin Kotler, reportedly subject of a potential assassination threat.
Right.
Multiple Iranian dissidents have been targeted by Hell's Angels working for Iranian intelligence. We already know this. It's reported.
Right.
So again, could this be another factor where your former colleagues, JTF2, are more ready to go kinetic in Canada on our soil?
I think so. I mean, they have a domestic mandate as much as an out of area or foreign country mandate, so they can do it. Like the authorities in place, and anything that would be associated, whether it's terminology, nomenclature, certain words that are used and phrases, but anything that is captured under the umbrella of terrorism will have their attention. Right? That's what they're stood up for. That's why they exist. So if, for an example, the cartels, with the fentanyl crisis and, the meth, drug,
there's so many labs for so many chemicals in Canada. It's insane.
Yeah, it's wild. So given that, and those are known facts, and then as a suggested phrase that this is inflicting terrorism upon Canadians, which I agree with, then of course this is going to have their attention. Having their attention and then turning that phrase into action. I mean, at what level do those authorities have to be provided? I don't know. I don't know. And where it sits right now, I don't know. But what I do know with confidence, you give those guys the opportunity and they're going to do good work. Yeah.
So let me roll back, and I'm sure people will want to know, because I'm gonna post this podcast as well as you. How did you get into soldiering and this unit? And what did you find you excelled in? What you can share? I know there's some stuff that you probably can't touch, but
yeah, I mean, for me at the beginning, it was during Afghanistan. So I got an opportunity to see members of JTF2 operating in Afghanistan, and it really motivated me to want to be part of that. I was asking a lot of questions at that time. I was, 20, 22, 23 years old, and Afghanistan 2002 was with conventional forces. Watching these guys operate, I'm like, who are those guys? What are they doing? There's a lot of secrecy. There was a lot of just like, you don't really need to know or whatever. Even though we were, wearing the same, Canadian flag on the shoulder, they were still very like, you don't need to know about that. But, through time and building rapport with guys that were active, of course, they're going to, share some with you because they believe in it. They believe in sharing that with other Canadians, but also they saw an opportunity to recruit and motivate guys to want to fill those spaces in the unit. So my motivation changed, and I would say probably 3 times while I was at the unit. At first, I just wanted to be part of the best of the best. And then after probably 4 or 5, maybe 6 years at the unit, kind of getting a feel of how the unit operated, starting to get pretty good at a lot of different things. Then my motivation became, I want to be a surgical weapon. I want to be as good as I possibly can be in a wide variety of skill sets. So I took training very seriously, but operationally is where you get to see the fruits of your labor and actually be tested and see what works and what doesn't. So we would do a really good job of, debriefing and after actions, what went wrong, what went well, what could we do better. And I really dove into that, and I wanted to be the best I could possibly be at being a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
And then closer to the end of my career, my motivation changed again, where I saw some things that were happening at the government level. I saw and felt like there wasn't a appetite or a motivation to get us as involved as we could be. So I kind of felt like the example that I would use would be a Formula One race car, a high performing vehicle that was parked in the garage with a tarp over top of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like,
that's
man,
the worst feeling.
It is. So I was like, man, let us go. Take the tarp off.
And I felt that in journalism myself.
Really? Yeah.
In certain companies. Yeah.
So that was the feeling I was getting. And it was growing and festering inside of me. I thought, man, just let the tarp off, let these horses run, let us do what we're really good at. So rather than being disgruntled and pissed off about the way things are that are higher than where I'm at and outside of my sphere of influence, I thought, well, what can I do? So then my motivation the last few years of the year of my unit time, was to pass on as much knowledge as I could to the next generation, because they were going to be the ones that would take the football to the end zone.
Yeah.
Right. So my motivation changed throughout. I was there for 16 years, did a lot, learned a lot. But I always often felt we could be doing more. And we were, I won't say wasted is not the right word, but underutilized, under-leveraged to what the capability truly really entails with that unit.
That leads me to like two important questions for Canada. The first one, amazingly, just as a journalist, I didn't even know about JTF2 until recent years coming to Ottawa, really.
Right.
And then I heard from some people on the inside, these guys, or, this unit's badass. The Americans will say, we want to work with them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, can you enlarge on that? I mean,
sure. Yeah, the majority of the folks that we had the great opportunity to work with and still work with today, they're very well known. There's books written, there's movies written, there's articles left over right. We've had the opportunity to work with some of the best in the world, and some of those organizations, I remember it like it was yesterday. Working with them, and after the fact, like, wow, you guys are squared away. Because they didn't even know. They knew that the unit exists, but they really never saw the exposure of what the guys were capable of. And the majority, not all, but the majority of those organizations, like the SAS in the UK, the SAS in Australia, New Zealand, all of the Five Eyes, the Americans, multiple different units with the Americans, they all said the same thing. The majority would say, man, we would work with you guys in a heartbeat. You guys are, squared away, checked out. The downfall to that is, and the reality is, we don't, other than highly talented dudes that are very capable to do a lot with very little, we don't bring a lot in the big scheme, right? We don't bring airlift. We don't bring unique capabilities that, in comparison to our American, American friends, they do, simply because of the funding, the support, and the numbers, right? But what we're capable of as a smaller organization, we literally, I would say generationally, each group of men that work at that organization kept pushing it just a little bit more, kept pushing and exposing what Canadians are capable of.
So the human aspect is second to none of what Canada can produce.
I believe so,
for
yeah.
warfighters.
Yes, I believe so.
I mean, that gets me emotional because I feel that more Canadians need to know that. And that brings us to, is it possible that the unit can be, okay, now that Canada has agreed to pay our 2% NATO target, so we can be back at the big kids table, hopefully.
Yeah.
Could JTF2 be part of, scaling out those capabilities in a smart, cost-effective way?
I think so. And I think, the 2%, for example, GDP, that's a must. That has to happen just for us to even be looked at and considered, because for the last decade, we haven't met that mark. And, the Americans, for an example, are kind of getting tired of pulling us along, like, what do you guys bring to the table? Like pony up, do better. And I agree, do better. This
is from someone to get political. There's a lot of people that, the big bad orange guy and 51st state. And I think people on the inside are like, well, I'm sorry, but we got to start pulling our weight.
We do. We got to start pulling our weight. Say what you want about, the president of the United States. He shoots from the hip. He says a lot of things that doesn't really get held accountable for. But what he does is he put pressure. He puts pressure on people, and I think Canada's feeling it. And, I was just in Florida a month ago, and, like, I got an American tattoo on my arm, and, I go out for dinner or whatever, and small conversations with the waiter or whatever. Where are you from? I can hear your accent. Yeah, from Canada. The majority of the folks that I had conversations with in Florida were apologetic. The majority, they're like, man, sorry, things are the way they're, man. Out of your control, man. That's just the way it is.
It's not at your level.
They were very thankful for coming to visit, and very thankful for not having a hate on for the Americans. It's like that at that level for Canadians to fold their arms or rip their teddy bear up and throw it in the corner and say, "Oh, American, boo-hoo, you're terrible." Like, settle down. I believe we would not be living as comfortably as we are in Canada if we didn't share the border with the Americans. So cautious with that. But then I would flip that on the coin on the head. And I would also say, careful in the States, and whoever's shouting out these comments, like, careful. You've got a strong entity to the north, and you want to preserve that relationship. So I would say and suggest we need them as much as they need us. And collectively, we're a lot better if we just stop squabbling over the nonsense and actually get down to the grassroots of some serious issues that both parties on both sides of the border have an onus to take responsibility for.
So back in 2016, I was able to start working with Kydex, and the reason I wanted to start working with Kydex was because I was a left-handed shooter. Finding left-handed gear was extremely hard, so I just put two and two together, started working with Kydex, making left-handed holsters for myself. From there, quote-unquote, refined my process. Started making gear for buddies that were cops in military, and it literally snowballed from there.
Everything that we do is handmade by shooters for shooters, and there's a lot of other Kydex companies out there, and they are also for shooters by shooters. But we take the time and we care about what we do, and I think that shows in our products.
Like working here, this is our home. We brought it from home, and we created a home. Our kids have worked here, so this is our home.
So an action item could be, if we acknowledge, as I'm saying, yeah, Vancouver's being used, and there's a lot of fentanyl being produced in Canada that's going around the world. Canadians, just stop fighting that.
Yeah.
Recognize it. Get our authorities in place. So
yes.
Your former teammates.
Yes.
And this operative unit
yes.
from Canada could be working with, FBI, DEA, Special Forces.
ATF, Special Forces, tactical policing units. Like, that's why these guys are trained. That's why they're in place, is to do these things with surgical precision. I mean, there's no question, depending on, the size of the target or how many people, yeah, you could send a rag force, infantry unit, and they would smash things and they would do a good job of cleaning house. The reality is there might be a lot of collateral damage, and that's not a slag on the conventional forces, but generally they throw big numbers with a lot of force at problem sets. I think in situations like this, you need something that's a little bit more clandestine, a little bit more surgical, a little bit, well, not a little bit, but well thought out, well timed and executed, dissemination of the information shared with the right people at the right time. So there's pieces and parts to ensure successful, missions to go off like this. But it would start with policy change, and it would start with, having a legitimate conversation about, what action steps are we going to put into place right now? What can we change, and why have we not yet? Like, there's some things that could have been put in place, years ago.
Yeah, and I think part of that is the public conversation. First, knowing we have the capabilities. Second, admitting we have the problem. Yeah, our borders have been weak.
Sure.
Yeah, we do have fentanyl super labs. Yeah, Vancouver and Toronto are laundering trillions, over $1 trillion, my research shows, from these networks, and it's impacting every part of your life and your children's life to come. Can they compete for a home? So I do think part of my job is, let's get Canadians to be real, admit where we're not holding or, carrying our weight. And then we can have those real conversations politically.
I agree.
And tactically.
We, as a nation, societally, my view is it, and I'm strong on it, and it may offend a few people that are listening, but if it offends you, it probably applies to you. We need to toughen up. We need to get over the nonsense of whose feelings we're hurting. There's some serious stuff that is happening right here in Canada. And we have forces and people and professionals and talented individuals that have a solution to these problems. Let them do their work. And if that, in doing so, that offends a few people along the way, or if there's a few Canadians that choose to continue to point the finger and say that's somebody else's problem, no, it's our problem. It's on our soil. And our kids are the ones that are going to feel the wrath of it. So we need to do something about it, and do something about it right now. You know? And with that too, like, when I talk about the softness, like, generally speaking, not everyone, of course, generally speaking, Canadians are uber passive aggressive. Very, very, like, just overall. Where
our whole last election was a pure passive aggressive exercise.
Man, it makes me sick. And sometimes I wake up in the morning, it's, 3:00 in the morning, I'm sweating, looking at the ceiling, and my wife's like, "You okay?" I'm like, I don't know. I think, like, maybe I'm the problem. Maybe I'm not seeing something that I should be. And I don't believe that anymore. I don't. I believe there are things that are going on that don't sit well with me. And the country that I fought for a decade ago is not the country that I'm living in today. And it needs to change.
A lot of people, I mean, from all walks of life. And I do feel, it's important that people be respectful and recognize things change. But yeah, when your streets, your universities are being taken over by Iranian threat networks, making certain communities not feel that they can live in their communities safely anymore, that's one piece of the fentanyl money laundering network. And how many people recognize that radicalism that's taken over our streets is connected?
Yeah.
So that's my job. I mean, I wanted to ask you again, like, getting people to understand what your colleagues and former teammates do and what you did. The intelligence piece, that surgical piece of the unit, can you walk through again, as much as you can, how an operation might work, in a foreign city in the Middle East? And
yeah, I mean, without giving up, too much of capability. I mean, it's the special forces, so the guys they're capable of a lot. Generally, the task might be, if it's in a foreign country, there's a reason that there's interest in that region, because there's a direct connection that poses a danger potentially to Canadians, right? So if they send an advanced party team in there, maybe it's to kind of collect some early intelligence and find out who's making some of these decisions. Where is the information going? Maybe that's their job. Their job at the onset is just to kind of find out who the major players are in that region. And then as things evolve and develop, would there be a potential of kinetic application? There could be, but in the current state and, the realities of drone warfare, things have changed. The battlefield and the way people are fighting today I'll be completely honest, there's cowards out there. Cowards that are using drones to drop bombs to do the dirty work, where, mano a mano, put your dukes up. Now I'm being a little bit facetious there, but that has gone to the wayside. Mm-hmm. Some people will say, well, that's sophisticated. That's using software and in technical hardware to get the effect that you're after. I'm like, okay, that's easy for people to make those decisions that are, sitting in a nice leather chair somewhere that has no cause and effect on them. But what about the boots on the ground? So now guys are trying to collect information with the concern of, the amount of drones that could either be collecting information, most likely, or dropping bombs, most likely. So it changes not only the application of the operation, the outcome, but also how they get that information. So where I'm going with that is things evolve quickly, but as a current, operation would not be uncommon. Advanced party would go in, set the groundwork, find out who's who, and then from there things would kind of, branch out to, further on operations. Generally.
Yeah, I wanted to ask. I mean, just your life as a person, being at the tip of the spear. I mean, obviously, I'm guessing it highly rewarding and also would have had some impacts on you in some ways. Can you speak about that?
Yeah, very rewarding for sure. I loved every minute of it. I would do it again in a heartbeat. I have absolutely no regrets, other than, like, I'd say my only regret, and it could be a blessing, it is most likely a blessing in disguise, but, there's lots of stories out there from different people similar to myself, but I've never actually taken the life of another human being. Right? So I wanted to experience that. And, you know, I hope this isn't received as like I'm some sort of nut job that just wanted to rip people's heads off. Although there's a part of that. Yeah, I would. Yeah,
That's the MMA part, right?
Yeah. I still enjoy that too, but like, I wasn't like trigger hungry. I wanted that experience. I wanted to. That's why I chose that lifestyle. That I knew exactly what I was getting into. I knew if there was a situation that was going to be presented, I would have to be able to make that decision. And lots of close calls, lots of things that could have unfolded very, very differently. But that's just my experience. Right. So, 8 operational deployments, and I never took the life of one person. I wouldn't sugarcoat that was my experience. Now, other guys that I've worked with, that is not the case, man. There's some guys that have some serious trigger time, and their experiences different from my experiences, although operating in the very same area is just chance and opportunity, right? Like, one example I can give you is any given night, there may be 2 targets of opportunity that need to be taken out at the same time. Well, if team A goes to, target 1 and team B goes to target 2, it could be a dry hole or it could be a dust up. And very similarly, at any given night, that could be switched. So it's just chance and opportunity. That was my experience. That's the only thing I kind of would have liked to experience. But like I said at the very beginning, maybe that's a blessing. Maybe that's something I just don't have to worry about or live with for the rest of my life. But I'd be lying if I said, I didn't want to experience it. I did.
You mean you wanted to experience live fire?
Yeah, I wanted to experience what it's like to actually take the life of another human being.
As a soldier,
doing my job.
I mean, people will hear that and some will say, I don't know what they'll say, but walk me through that as a soldier. You were being a soldier at that level, you were training to take lives.
Well, yeah, I mean, like our job was to solve problems, right? And resolve conflict. And in that,
in order to save lives in Canada.
Right. In order to save lives. So in the act of saving lives, there may be a time required to take a life. And there's no sugarcoating that. That's reality. War is complicated. Conflict is complicated. Conflict, including firearms, is challenging. The human factor of making a split second decision that could be the determination between taking somebody's life or not. Those are real, and those emotions that are connected, those are as real as it gets, and nobody will ever be able to take that from me because I had those real-time experiences. But the reality is, as a professional in uniform, my job was to solve problems. In solving problems, there was a tangible reality that we may have to take a life.
I don't know if this is going too big, but it just occurred to me. We're both speaking about, I think, we both respect Americans and Americans
100%.
very much.
Very much.
And I have a feeling that the psyche of the average American is maybe more ready to be tough in terms of you need to do some tough things in order to protect your own homeland.
I agree, 100%.
So that gets into what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You were ready to take that step to protect your country.
100%. And making, almost like, setting the tone. Sometimes that's what has to happen. Growing up as a kid, again, many dust ups, playground, whatever. You're playing basketball, your buddies, playing soccer, your buddies, things get dusted up. You punch each other in the mouth, you pick each other up, you dust each other off, and you do it again tomorrow. That's common. That was common. We've come to a position now where there's no such thing as a dust up. There's no such thing as, well, I shouldn't say no such thing. It just doesn't happen as often where people take a stand and say, no, that's a hard line. Like there are some things that are acceptable and you've just crossed that line. And because you did, here are the consequences, right? Where Canada does not take that stance. Very reactive, very passive aggressive, very quick to tear our own down rather than lift our own up, and very quick to look across the border. When something goes well in the States, generally speaking, Canadians are like, oh yeah, that's a pretty good idea. We should probably do that too. And something goes sideways in the States, Canadians are very quick. Oh, those Americans, so foolish. Like, hey man, how about you think for yourself? And less about what's going on across the border. How about we focus on what's going on right here in Canada and then take that hard stance?
I mean, I think that gets back to that passive aggressive thing, I think we're both starting to play psychologist a bit, but it's good. When the 51st state thing came out, a lot of people, their first reaction is, of course, that's brutal. How can you say that?
Yeah.
But deep down, I think perhaps a lot of Canadians, we're both in a line of work where at least I've chosen to look at the darkness.
Yeah.
You had to.
Yeah.
Where it's like, many Canadians have had a coddled sense that, we're enjoying our standard of living just because of us. Whereas actually, no, we're riding with some very strong people.
Yeah. And if you look at the history of Canada, nobody in Canada fought for this country, right? Nobody bled for this country.
You mean they were fighting for the king?
Right. So it was the French and it was the English that fought for what we know as Canada. And I think that has a factor. I truly think there hasn't been anything up to this point that Canadians have collectively came together and said, yeah, we need to scrap for this.
In terms of that problem solver mentality, and I'm just being selfish here, I'm speaking about my knowledge of we've got a big problem in Canada with Iran, China, Mexico. Our streets are honestly starting to look lawless. We had Ontario's premier the other day had his car raided, and he's now talking about castle law. I mean, both of us know this is the reality, although many people have been trying to deny it, and generally trying to deny that Canada has big crime problems, and it's transnational crime, not originated on our shores, but using our cities, using our banks, using our law offices. I'll stop there. Do you think people on your former team would be willing to say, okay, let's turn inwards, and if we have those authorities, let's see what we can do on those networks in Canada, get really creative?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I mean, you can literally work a target wherever it is in the nation. You have guys fly in, from wherever it is to wherever they need to do this job, start to work the target in the package and, execute it, and then they're gone. And then you'll have guys that are hungry because they see the fruits of their labor. They actually get to put good work to use, and they're cleaning up their own backyard. Like, talk about pride, honor, and purpose. Like, man, you're doing all the good things right here in Canada.
That's the Canadian dream should be, you got something to protect. Let's
protect it,
let's
protect your house,
make it thrive.
Yeah. Like, with all due respect, like, there's a lot of things that are going on across the globe. There's percolation everywhere. There's massive conflicts everywhere. And for Canada, to send a handful of highly trained, highly capable soldiers to Ukraine as a presence, or Latvia as a presence, like, man, take that funding, take that money, protect your own. Now, I understand at a bigger level, there's cause and effect, strategically, I get that. But realistically, all of this is happening in a foreign country, and there's a whole lot of stuff that's happening right here in our own country that needs higher priority, in my opinion. That's just my opinion.
There's no question within the last 5 years, I mean, you can literally, for those trained to see it, you can see the cartel activity, which is the brutal side of the Chinese Communist Party networks.
Right.
And, I've just had a tremendously vivid and dark insight. And so I'm continuing to get after it that way.
Right on.
I know you're doing what you do. So this has been an honor for me talking to you today.
It's awesome, man. I remember the first session that we had together. So, a little bit of rapport building, some questions back and forth. And when we started to train and actually train, generally what I share with folks is I can tell within about 3 seconds that I put my hands on another human being what they're capable of. If they're soft as baby shit, or if they've got some fight in them, I can usually tell within 3 seconds. And what was fun is, as soon as we started doing, I think we were doing a little bit of striking, and then we went into some clinch stuff where, we starting to ramp it up pretty good. And I quickly realized that, you talked about your competitive side. I could see it, I could feel it, but also your determination to not only want to get better, but to train harder. I admire that. And from guys that have trained with me in the past, you can usually tell within 3 seconds what somebody is at least willing to do. And what I would love to share with Canadians is, man, just train, do something and train, because there may become a time where you're going to be called upon. And history repeats itself. We saw what happened in the Ukraine. When that kicked off, there were literally Ukrainian citizens, a farmer today, and then a soldier tomorrow. And what boggles my mind is the amount of Canadians I have conversations with. They're like, oh, that'll never happen here in Canada. Like, careful. Anything is possible. Whether you're getting into a dust up with a cartel member, whether you're getting a dust up with somebody who has evil intentions, who you may not know, or you get into a dust up just by that Canadian who's hit the limit. They percolated enough, and today is the day that they snap. If you are unable to protect yourself, you are a liability. And you may call upon the police. They may show up.
They may not.
They may not. They may not. So anyway, for what it's worth, I appreciate our time together, the great conversations that we had, but also the training aspect. Like it's always fun when I look at my calendar and I see Sam's on the docket. I'm like, oh, hey, this is going to be a doozy. This is going to be a good training session.
No, that brings two things to mind. One, when you said that what you did and the people on your unit that made themselves with less funding, less support, the best comparable humans in the world at your activity, war fighting, special forces, that is self-improvement. That's how each person on the team is like, how can I improve? You know, that dialectical struggle. And that's what I do in journalism. Right. So that's true. You know, I'm never going to be able to stand up to you physically, but I see the same mentality in what we're doing. And I appreciate that. Yeah.
Arenas might be different, but the mindset, the mentality is very, very similar, which is what I respect. I do have a question before we wrap it up. So the Bureau, your website. So you wrote a book and the website is really active. So I get feeds from your website almost every day.
Almost every day now, yeah.
So you're dropping something almost every day. And if you don't mind, just share the viewers, because you have two parts. One is a paid subscription, and then one is you sign up and then you get a lot, you pump out a lot of really good documents.
Yeah, so you go to the bureau.news, and the way it works on Substack is you just plug your email in there, and that means you get, whenever I or my contributors publish a story, it goes right to your inbox. And so you can get the free version, and that means you'll get a shot at most of the stories for about 6 to 12 hours before they go beyond the paywall. But when you pay whatever it is, $10 or $10 a month, $100 a year, then you're getting the exclusives, non-paywalled, and you get that archive forever. And absolutely, I'm pumping out myself 4 to 5 strong stories a week. And as I say, it's just a continuation of the style of writing and the depth of writing that I was doing on my best-selling book, Willful Blindness. And it's a dream. It's really a fulfillment of a dream for me to take everything I learned in 20 years, that is working with the best editors in Canada, the best lawyers in Canada, and then taking my own mentality, whatever my parents gave to me, my own capabilities. And now I'm the controlling mind of the tip of the spear. And I can be very nimble and put out stories like all the time. So that's what you're getting when you come to the Bureau. It's
fantastic, man. Like good Canadians doing good things and disseminating the information to other good Canadians. It's awesome. With the paid subscription, is there a way to, when somebody signs up for it, is there a way to find out who that person is? And, let's be honest, like the shitheads have access to that too. And their credit cards are, the same as everybody else's.
Yeah. Like if I spend time, I can go through my back end and see X lawyer for, X. I'll just leave it at that. Sure. I can see there's a lot of lawyers that are trying to look at every word I say. Sure. So I'm not blocking them. Yeah. They can read what I do. Sure. I'm accountable and transparent. Yeah, would I call them bad people? Yeah, some of them I would call bad people. Yeah. And they're not gonna get away with what they do forever, because there's a lot of good Canadians, Americans supporting what people like us do. Are any crooks, paid subscribers? Probably. Sure. Are any of them sending me tips and trying to take me astray? Yeah, I feel there's a lot of people coming at me all the time, and I'm trained up on that now. Like I say, I'm not perfect. I've been exploited once or twice in my career.
Right. If you want to share, with the incident that happened where somebody harassed your wife, so a family member was approached. If you want to share that story, but then the follow-up question would be, was that reported, and was there any fallout after the fact?
Oh, this is a case of, I'll just be very careful here because we're speaking about bad people. A legal service kind of steps to my home and involving a family member in a way they shouldn't be involved.
Right.
So eventually I come to the door with my camera rolling and like, you don't come back here or else, and this'll, you're not serving me, I'm serving you, my friend.
Right.
So yeah, those are the types of things that, I shouldn't have to face as a Canadian, and I won't let stand. There'll be a process, whether it takes years or not, to unwind who's ever behind that. But I would add this, does it have me thinking, I'll always be Canadian, but that doesn't mean I might have my citizenship and live in the States where I've got more support and protection while I'm doing my bit for Canada.
Sure.
If I still can.
Yeah.
And these are the types of things that make me a little bit, get almost a little emotional when you do have to think about
in your own country
legally and physically protecting yourself.
And after that incident, was it in your thought, or maybe you follow through on it? Did you feel like it was worthwhile to file a police report? And if so, like, what would that look like? And, how does, because something like that it's a form of harassment, somebody to knock on your door.
Well, it's a legal service. So there's a way to make it look like it's valid.
Okay.
And certainly I informed the proper lawyer involved that I didn't like, that. And enough said on that, but there were previous incidents where I've reported something to police, and I can't say that, I'm very happy with the response at this point. We'll leave it at that. But there's a process. To get a little detailed, after my duty to warn, I think I was on, I saw the black RCMP vans coming by for a few days, that the same ones that, Diplomat X, in X Ottawa neighborhood would have that sort of close presence for a few days. Yeah. But, life goes on.
Right. Yep. Life goes on for sure. Being resilient, being adaptive to change, and just, having a plan, a plan for, if this happens, I'll do that. If that happens, I'll do this. It's,
I'll keep training with you and being friendly with you and your friends. That's it's helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I look forward to the next session together. Again, if you guys are not following Sam Cooper, reach out. Do you have a YouTube channel?
No, not yet. There's a podcast for the Bureau, which
that's right. Podcast.
It's a video podcast off
the
go
website.
To thebureau.news. Yeah.
Okay.
And it also runs out to Apple and Spotify or whatever.
Okay.
The Bureau podcast.
Okay. So once again, the Bureau, check him out, and follow him. He's releasing some really interesting and valid content on a regular basis, and good Canadian, doing good things for other fellow Canadians. So thank you, guys. I appreciate you taking the time. If there's anything you want to share before we sign off, then go ahead and do that.
No, we've covered it. And likewise for you, I think you've shared everything I've asked you. So anything else to offer?
Right on. And part of this too, the motivation, Josh is, he's a wealth of knowledge. He's got some great ideas. And, part of this motivation with the DA podcast is to share some of the good stuff that, not just the unit, but the Canadian Armed Forces are capable of, and, our law enforcement professionals, what they're capable of. And it's about sharing some of the good stuff. Now, I sometimes get fired up, and I will sometimes say things that are, rightfully emotionally driven. It's because I give a shit. And I'm also very wide awake to what's going on. And until we start as a Canadian collective coming together, working together, and sharing these ideas with each other and actually taking a stance, it's only going to get worse. And for Canadians out there that believe otherwise, you need to get your head out of the sand, look up, shake your head a little bit, and take heed to what's actually happening right here in Canada.
I've said before that let's apply the passion we do to the hockey playoffs to other things going on in the country. If someone runs your goalie, you don't let that stand. We're letting our country be run over. So let's apply that hockey
analogy.
Analogy.
That's good. Good. Right on. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Sam. I really appreciate it, man. It's great to have you on the show. And for all you viewers out there, like, subscribe. There'll be more of these segments coming up in the future. And keep making the comments too. Like I said in the past, the negative stuff, it gets glanced over. We don't really pay too much attention to it. But if you got something intelligent to say, or you have a legitimate question, please pose it in the comments box, and we'll address it when we get some time and opportunity. Okay. Thanks, guys.